Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. In today's episode, sorry guys, there's a bit of technical difficulties, okay? In today's episode, I wanted to give a tribute to this poet from 800 years ago by the name of Farid Attar. And the title, World Peace, will be found first in cyberspace. I wanted to speak about how human nature may transition and also get into sideline topics of the archetypes of angels and demons. And please let me know if there's an issue with the audio. So to begin, there's a poet by the name of Attar again. He has this quote. It's part of his work, The Conference of the Birds. And he's a mystic, of course, a Sufi mystic from 800 years ago. He says, "The home we seek is in eternity. The truth we seek is like a shoreless sea, of which your paradise is but a drop. This ocean can be yours. Why should you stop, beguiled by dreams of evanescent dew? The secrets of the sun are yours, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams. Turn to what truly lives. Reject what seems. Which matters more, the body or the soul? Be whole. Desire and journey to the whole," spelled with a capital W. You know, this quote is very profound because right now you can look at the planet and you can divide the human beings on this rock in the middle of nowhere, which is the greatest clue. You can look at human beings and classify them as materialists and immaterialists. And I have envisioned in the future all philosophical systems, pretty much there's going to be two types of human beings. Those who are knownists and unknownists. Those who consider in a universe where there is cause and effect, a sort of cause and effect reality, where our actions have consequences. We are looking at the world and we're wondering, how did the world end up being this, through a sort of cause and effect modality. Those who consider that the cause is unknown and the effect is known, they become unknownists. Those who consider the cause was known and the effect is unknown, they become knownists. And pretty much this is the distinction, I would say, between materialism and immaterialism. Because if our causal position of intelligence was not material, how can we say that we are truly material? there are many questions that engulf the human vision, that surround the human vision. And aside from these questions that remain in the unknown, we also have problems that we require to solve in the known landscape of reality. I would say that every human being has access to two types of life, an inner life and an outer life. The outer life is based on how the individual manages and how the collective or collective's outer life manages objects. One's inner life is how they manage themselves as a subject and manage other subjects, And our inner lives are really, for now, kept in stories. The stories we tell ourselves dictate the context where we find ourselves to be a character that can navigate. So when we look at this world and we think of world peace, it's as if we are considering world peace on two dimensions. And I will get back to why I shared that quote from Attar. But just this point that our outer lives require to be managed in ways where all our inner lives to some degree find contentment. Now there are quotes, for example, from Salvador Dali where he says, do not fear perfection, you cannot reach it. And there's this other quote that says, to be human, to err is to be human. That means the human being is not a perfect creature, and the concept of perfection is really a concept, because when it comes to creative ability, it's as if a person can keep adding dimensions to a moment until they have to at some point just stop. It's as if the artist holds the paintbrush and draws the art and can add more layers until the painter is like, okay, enough. And that becomes the artwork. So when I think about the future of humanity, aside from this cause and effect modality, aside from us being like imperfect creatures seeking perfection, what it is that we create prototypes. If you think of world peace as a sort of invention, if you have this attitude towards world peace, that it's something that 8 billion human beings right now alive require to invent, to create, not only in the outer realms but also in their inner realms. The life behind our eyes is really where the momentum for the life outside in front of our eyes is coming from. And the interesting thing I would say about knowledge is that we have this view of knowledge that it requires to be consecutive, sequential, and what is knowledge when it comes to a living being? It's a system, And this whole world can be seen as a natural system that is functioning in unknown ways, and all the efforts of human beings so far has been to know this unknown system. In order to consider outer realm world peace, human beings need to climb up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there needs to be global physiological survival, then global psychological survival, then we have global self-actualization, you see. And I feel when it gets to that point, it's as if we are, you can say, multidimensional in two ways right now in regards to the body and the mind. But I feel in order to be able to manage the body and mind, there needs to be a third viewing position. to attain physiological survival, those are the challenges of energy. There was this idea that Nikola Tesla was trying to somehow create something that provides free energy, and whether that's true or not, it is a suggestion that technology will bring us our physiological global survival. Many people fear technology, but they don't realize that technology is just advancement. You can say the invention of the wheel was like advanced technology back in the day. Do you know? The invention of tools such as spears or, weapons, they were technology. And the thing about technology is that objects are not animate, people are animate, and people use objects. So it's as if the object is bound to the free will of the individual using it. Now there is this idea that in the future technology may become sovereign, may become may become independent to the will of the human being. But for now, a vast majority of technologies we find are dependent on us. We are the pilots of the types of effects we cause on this planet. Physiological survival, I see it in the sense of, if I could say a few things about this. First of all, there's this notion of universal income, and when you look at human beings physiologically, if everybody was, let's say right now, a billionaire, everybody had billions, they went and checked their bank account and they're like, is that the infinity symbol I see? Imagine there was that sort of situation. If everybody had enough, let's say, money, they would have no reason to, in some sense, work. So you would kind of think that people would be entertaining themselves till the day they die. But regardless of how much we have our resources, because we want to maintain the natural biological body, there has to be some sort of movement-based reality coordinated, right? And because we're temporary, you can say creatures, we're temporary creatures, we are mortal, that means we're here for a certain amount of time. We can consider it that world peace in the outer realms is the quality of the physical journey of human life. And if it is peaceful, it means that people's freedoms are not destroying each other's freedom. Now, the issue about world peace is, for now, scarce resources. Everybody is trying to go to the major parts of cities, rather than a country having one downtown area. It's as if there should be multiple focal points of human activity, and I just see that technology may solve this issue with a lack of space. It could be like in Hong Kong, where houses are so small, they're wondering how could people live in it. So a person can come into a small house after work and then go into cyberspace, and in cyberspace feel like they have a whole valley to themselves. When The poet Attar says the home we seek is in eternity. It's as if the moment we become eternal beings, we will feel at home. And he says the truth we seek is like a shoreless sea, as if a truth that is no longer conditional. So we have to aim towards an unconditional life, a life that surpasses all the conditions that we see today. There was a person, he was asked about his history, and he said that he has 3 types of history. He said he has his individual history, which is from the beginning of his birth to his death, is the body's life. The person said they have a universal history, where he said this is the mind's life, from the beginning of the universe to the end of the universe. And then there is a part of him, the 3rd dimension, where there is no history, as if there is a part of all of us, just like how a tree is rooted in soil we cannot see. It's as if conditional human intelligence is rooted in a sort of eternity, and our conditions are found in time, and the notion of time arises because matter is changing in space. If matter didn't change, we wouldn't know in some sense what time it is, So it's as if we are to attain world peace, there could be potentially 3 dimensions of consideration. When Attar says this ocean can be yours, why should you stop beguiled by dreams of evanescent doom? The secrets of the sun are yours, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams. It's like in this quote, Attar, this mystic, is talking to people as if they are universal beings. Imagine this whole time you have felt you're a creature on a rock, then you realize, wait a minute, it's a universe happening at once. And the roots of this consciousness go towards an unconditional awareness. For the body's life, again, technology will have a huge role. Cyberspace will, let's say physical technology, will in some sense satisfy the physiological problems of the species. Now let's say for the psychological problems, there was this video I saw which was hilarious. There was this person who he had this keyboard, and the control key was missing, and the escape key was missing, and the space key. And so he takes the camera towards the control key, and he's like, I'm losing control. And then he takes the camera towards the escape key that's missing from the keyboard of his computer, and he says, I can't escape, And then he goes to the space key, and he says, all I need is space. A vast majority of human suffering, I feel, is occurring because we have a different emotional reception of our inner landscape, of the subjective landscape of our lives, rather compared to the objective landscape. Because we have this sort of free will we're conditioned into, it's as if the child moves its arms and its arm moves by its will. Right? But if a person wants a sort of outer condition, it's as if either the world has to adjust to their inner realms, or they have to allow their inner realms to adjust to the outer realms. And we know, in accordance to history and just survival of the fittest, that those who cannot adjust their inner realms to the outer realms don't get to see the outer realms. So it's a sort of balance of our inner life and our outer life that will create a state of humanhood that will be able to endure a sort of multidimensionality of reality where there can be a peaceful journey. Because the world is changing, let's say we even created the most peaceful outer realms, like literally an asteroid there could be a meteor shower, there could be so many things. Right, like in Japan in 2016 there was a tsunami, right? So it's like all human progress can be wiped out by nature. So it's as if we have to, as a species, consider a changing world and then wonder about how we can peacefully travel through it. For the psychology of the human being, let's say cyberspace grants you, a sort of outer realm high. The person, let's say has a bad day at work, comes home, gets into cyberspace, enters cyberspace, and they become a juggernaut. Literally, they simulate an army and they release their anger in cyberspace. I mean, cyberspace totally can get rid of domestic violence. Imagine that there's a husband and a wife, and let's say either the husband is being abusive physically or the wife is being abusive physically. And so in this circumstance, imagine one of them sees that the other person is, let's say, intoxicated, angered to a point where they are oblivious of the mind of other human beings, of the way their eyes are living and the type of world they have seen. So in that domestic violence scenario, imagine, for example, let's go with the traditional, where there's a husband, let's say, hitting a wife, and that wife sees the husband is like intoxicated, angered. It's like it doesn't realize where it is. So what the wife does is that the wife activates a cyberspace program, and the husband suddenly goes into a cyberspace view where there's a sort of cyberspace wife and cyberspace kids, and the whole wife and kids are just carrying out normally in the day, and the husband's just angry in his cyberspace world, right? So it can become something like this, where, I mean, any technology, it depends on the user. It can be good and bad, right? Even you can say somebody can use a pen to write something, or somebody can use a pen to attack someone, right? So it's as if, again, it comes down to the wisdom or the compassion or the mindfulness of the user of technology. Now, in the outer realms, because we have two options: either natural, either nature, things we do live in accordance to nature, or we live in accordance to the unnatural systems we have ignited in nature. We have started. It's as if civilization is a program that our ancestors started, and we find ourselves in it. Now, earlier in the episode, I talked about that if we wanted to invent world peace, there would be a prototype of world peace. This is why in the title I've said that world peace will be found in cyberspace first. And there is enough people living, you can say, digital lives. They're not in cyberspace, but we all have a relationship with cyberspace. There's so much social media going on. It's as if the attention of the human being from nature's creation went to its own creation. Now, I am trying to visualize what the prototype of world peace would look like in cyberspace. In cyberspace, I mean, a person is at peace if their free will is aligned to their outer realms. If in cyberspace anybody can have and their outer realms can listen. So what it would be is rather than 8 billion human beings in one world, it would be like 8 billion human beings in their own world, each of them in their own world inside one world. So it could be that there would be so many different projections of world peace. Maybe somebody's view of world peace is like everybody just going back to just living in trees and whatnot. Just living a simple natural life, as if those people who enter simulation, enter cyberspace, they will access that kind of simulation of reality, right? And it all, believe it or not, it's balanced. That means it's all about the desires of our minds and the desires of our bodies. We think that they're the same, but I will tell you they're distinct, right? A person can desire to fly, but their body can't fly. So physically they may not desire to fly, but their mind may desire to fly if there isn't any physical consequence. So there could be this possibility that, I wrote a science fiction novel. One chapter of it is called The Ocean on the Mountain Peak. And in this chapter, there's long story short, the main character and his robotic buddy, his robotic classmate, they are going up this mountain, and evidently there's someone hiding in the mountain. And who is hiding in the mountain is this programmer by the name of Dante. And I was inspired by Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, where Dante pretty much gave a picture to the 7 levels of heaven and 7 levels of hell. So in Dante's Inferno, Dante is this programmer in the year 5025 that has entrapped millions of people in a simulation called HH, which is heaven and hell. And it's a program. It's like this, everybody's kind of like, not everybody, but the vast majority of people are like trapped in this simulation, and they don't even know it's a simulation. So the main character and his robotic body in the story, they're going up into the mountain to, in some sense, stop this programmer to release these millions of people from this heaven-hell simulation. Or it can be one world where we all adjust to, or one world becomes something that in our inner realms adjusts to us. That's pretty much what I'm saying. The second thing I've made a note here to talk about is that in the subtitle I've written Transitions of Human Nature. And recently my attention has been going to topics where I felt maybe I should make these episodes like members only, so it's maybe not everybody in the public can cultivate these ideas, can assimilate these ideas into their worldview. But pretty much I was looking at this notion where this is me going into the past and wondering about a theological framework. We cannot ignore that some stories have spread in the minds of our species, that there are many human beings that have subjective frameworks upon the world that go back to ancient times. That means if you were to divide people, I would say, first of all, everybody has a relationship with their past, but some people don't have their attention on their relationships with the past in order to access a new future. But when we go in the past, we have the Abrahamic traditions, and through the theological lens, there's the story, of course, the creation story, where there is God, and God commands man into existence, makes him out of dirt, and then it's as if there's a sort of heavenly stage where there are angels in that stage, and an angel decides not to First of all, man makes a sin, and an angel decides not to follow the God, which is, you can give it the archetype of the divine will, the universal will. And man, of course, makes a mistake, and man is exiled to earth, and in some sense there is the notion of the fallen angel archetype. Now, one word, two words that we see used in culture are angels and demons. And I have thought about this idea from the theological framework that there is no saying in theology that God created demons. Do you see, there is something strange in theology where if you look at, for example, the Islamic text, or you look at the Christian text, you would see that it's as if the text is acknowledging two dimensions of entities. Do you know? Now, from the theological view, it's as if, like, how would I say it? It's as if that if you take the archetype of the angel as like the sun ray, as the sunbeam, and God as the sun, it's as if the sunlight is bound to the will of the sun. Do you know how the sun happens? Now, it's as if the disharmony or going against the divine will is the fall. It's as if man, like Adam and Eve, they were told not to take a fruit, and they took the fruit. They went against the divine will, and those angels that rebelled, they in some sense fell, right? And when you look at the implication of, for example, the word demonic and the word angel, you can say in some level it's as if one is being attributed to the impure and the angel is being attributed to the pure. So we'll think of now at the word abidance, as if there is impure abidance or pure abidance, or you can see this pure and impure in let's say in the future technologically, in a cyberspace setting, as unauthorized and authorized. So the idea of the demon is in some sense the idea of, at least I feel like I did a little bit of research on this, and it seems to be the case, but there are some people saying that, for example, in the New Testament, the idea of the demon being the angels that fell, in some sense not there, and that developed later. But there's various ways. But to me, from the theological framework, keep that in mind. You see, when somebody speaks, they got to select the context, and then they go play with the concepts inside that context, right? So the context right now I'm speaking about is through theology. So it's this relationship of divine will, abidance, pure abidance by the divine will, and impure abidance by, in some sense, impure abidance by the divine will. Now, you look at man, and of course religious people, on their minds is what is really important to them is not just having a relationship with the Creator, but in some sense the notion of trying to not have sins so they can attain paradise, so they can enter paradise, right? So what is a sin? A sin is a suggestion of the impure, and in some sense what I'm trying to say is that when there is free will, this impurity-purity dynamic can change. So it's as if there is, if the demon becomes more pure, it becomes a human. If the human becomes more pure, it becomes an angel. If the angel is truly pure, it is God. Do you know, a sort of idea like that? Hang on, guys, I need to get my laptop charged. Okay. Pretty much the descension, the transition of nature, you know. Aside from this angel demon archetype, you know, I mean, there is a story about Solomon, King Solomon, attributed to King Solomon, which I can share later. But I wanted to say that when you look at, for example, Greek mythology, you know, there's the war between the gods and the titans. When you look at Vedic mythology, there is the battle between the Asuras and the Devas, you know, and it's as if the Devas were seen as being celestial beings, or you can say disembodied beings, and the Asuras were seen as embodied beings. So as if right on, how would I say it, like on Earth so far in our history, we have the war. When it comes to war and battle, it's between formed phenomena, right? It's as if formed creatures are fighting other formed creatures. But this is an implication of a battle between the formed and the formless. But anyways, I'm just trying to suggest that when you look at animal nature, I mean, a savage animal, like, you know, killing all the other animals in its environment, that appears to the human mind, to the civilized human mind, as demonic. You look at, for example, an animal taking care of the environment, that seems, for example, angelic. And so if we are to have world peace, I feel there needs to be a transition of the psychology of human beings with an abidance to a greater will. But I'm not saying that it has to be a divine will. I'm not saying that it has to be just through the story of God. But this is, you see, when it comes to subjects, what we find is that our free will makes it optional, right? Even in the theological framework, it's as if God gave man a choice, you know. It's as if, one thing I always wondered is that God, they say God is forgiving. They say merciful and forgiving. That's the qualities attributed to God. But in my youth, I was like, why didn't God forgive man for taking the fruit or something, right? And there was a time where I thought, all right, there had to be the first mistake in order for there to be a sort of worldhood. But then, in, I don't know which text it was, I came across this idea where it was as if God is testing its own creation. That means, imagine you're an inventor and you create a robot, and this robot that you created, you set it up in a world where it can't see the inventor, right? So imagine the inventor is invisible. Imagine we human beings, we create a robotic realm that the robotic realm can't see us. We become angels to robots that it's like it's not written in their program or code to see us. Do you know? And then we would be watching our invention. feel there requires to be a transformation and transition of human nature. We look at the animal was very simple-minded. It was just engaged with the physical framework. But we look at the civilized human being, and the human being is not just considering a physical framework, just the establishment of law was like a sort of evolutionary development where we could project and keep fixed subjective context to the world, subjective frameworks. So it's a suggestion of evolution making an object into a subject, and by becoming a subject, it's accessing multidimensionality. This multidimensionality for now is caught in duality, good or bad. You can think of it right or wrong, night and day sort of mentality. Even the angelic and the demonic. But I feel that the more multidimensional we become, the more simultaneous lives become accessible. That means when I think about like the earliest creature, it had only one life. It was just looking at the outer realms. There was no inner realm. It was just looking for food, looking for shelter. Once it established these, the psychological life had space to move. And the biggest ideal of human beings is freedom. We all seek freedom, but I feel for most people it is an emotion. It has not been articulated in the outer realms. It's like many people want money, but they have not thought about how to attain it. Many people want to be happy, but they have forgotten the process towards it. It's as if our emotions are an expectation for our inner life to be instantly manifest in the outer life. The transition of the human body towards world peace would most likely have to do something with becoming more technologically infused. When it comes to the mind, we are right now in the information age. We have this view that it's about having more information, seek knowledge till the day you die. But after we have the information, it's how we use it. We have this view that we're just living in life. We don't have this view that we're using life. We are users. We have logged into life. And those who care about who is seeing beyond the screen of consciousness, they're known as mystics. There was what's his name? A man called Sri Ramana Maharshi, the sage. And he had this quote where he said, after you go through all the struggles, the challenges of the body and the mind and all of this, right, let's say through strenuous meditation and whatnot, through an effort towards the true state, he said you come to realize that everything is happening on the pure screen of consciousness. Pure screen of consciousness. It was as if the mystics back in the day had noticed, that the character in the video game is not them. That there are eyes, perhaps staring beyond the screen of life. So human beings have to somehow shift into a multidimensional identity, right? Or we try to make the world look like one photograph, a singular identity-based sort of world piece, which I feel is not practical. The challenge towards a peaceful world is so complex that it's as if like every person needs to first manage their inner realms. After they have managed their inner realms, they need to be able to, in some sense, integrate it with an outer realm that also has a major inner realm, right? So it's as if you look at a person, you're like, okay, there's what's in front of the person's eyes, what the person sees in front of their eyes, and then when they close their eyes, what they see behind their eyes, right? When we look at the species, right, we see physical infrastructure everywhere, but that non-physical infrastructure, the mind of a civilization. It could be that in a major global cyberspace reality, those who abide by how the cyberspace realm was programmed, they become angels in that cyberspace simulation. And it could be that to rebel against what is naturally present is a forgetting of just how truth has no explanation, it's just being, right? It's as if you can say that why was there a reason from the theological framework for an angel to resist? I mean, think of it this way, that the angel they say the difference between humans and angels again is that in some sense the angel doesn't have free will. It is literally the divine will. The human being has free will, it can choose right or wrong. Now the thing is that an angel rebelled in heaven, right? So that's an implication of God's will. So the rebellion was the divine will. Anyways, I've written another idea here. I've written here that the UN in the future will be like a school giving homework to all nations. I feel, I'm feeling so much this episode. I don't know, guys. When I just look at life, there's a physical solution required, and then there's an objective solution for 8 billion creatures living on a rock. Then there's a subjective solution. Now, those people who are, let's say, content with less, they solve their subjective solution, subjective problem. Those who are not content, they desire out. There has been times in my own life where I have gotten angry, and I would say there has been just like there's a bomb, like it's like an aftershock. There was a time where I got really angry that I just felt it wasn't human. I felt that the rage wasn't coming from my character, like the rage had nothing to do with my past anymore. It was a sort of, a mismanagement of energy or a mistaken evocation. Human nature changes. The mind is, let's say, like liquid. The body is like a solid, right? And so the liquid can find stability when it's contained. So I would say the challenge of trying to access world peace, but not as 8 billion bodies, as 8 billion minds. It's literally like trying to put a river into a container. The container has to be as changing as the river, right? So it could be that there is no world peace, there's just, we have realized a changing world. Or trying to be a step ahead in a changing world, or a couple steps ahead in a changing world, is like the closest we can get to world peace. So much of peace also has to do with control and what's not in your control, right? If something is not in their control, right? Let's say your neighbor is giving a podcast. Your neighbor's giving a podcast, and you're trying to sleep, right? It's like, that's something that's not in your control. And it can be that if something is not in our control and we try to control it, we suffer immensely. But at the same time, if something is in our control and we control it, that also gets rid of the suffering. The issue is that nature cannot be controlled. Nature is controlling us. Same time, we have Attar saying, content yourself. What does he say? He says, this ocean can be yours, why should you stop? Beguiled by dreams of evanescent doom, the secrets of the sun are yours, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams. It could be that our specific desire to have a specific shape of life, again in a changing system, in a dynamic system, it's as if there is a greater state, and Attar is saying, hey, why are you satisfied with the state you're in? The secrets of the sun can be yours. The secrets of the sun are the secrets of existence. All our existence comes from the sun, our visual existence. I never thought I'd say it, but it may be that in the future we transcend even the idea of soul. Like right now, we accept that we're humans, so it's not like a person is trying to be human, right? Everybody is human. You have this approach, aside from the behavior that implies what it means to be a human, like the civilized behavior. Because if we all were animals, then you can't, if we were vicious like animals, then it's like, what human we are. It's just a dressed animal, vicious animal. So in the future, if we realize that there is a reality to the mind, that it's not that we are in physical reality and we dream of other dimensions, that dream state is always happening, we tune out of that, any, like a state of intelligence where the person can project any human body, any type of body they want. It's as if, what would world peace look like then? You know, what would world peace look like if there was again a horizontal gene transfer? If we don't look like something, if we don't look like a shape, then we can't expect the peacefulness of a world to be a shape. It could be that the idea changes before a specific photograph is made absolute. The body needs food, the mind needs food. The body consumes food, let's say it digests food, the mind digests information. Digest sensory perception. And you know, technology can do something, cyberspace can do something that many people have not considered, I feel. It can give a person in 1 hour like 100 years of education, you know, or in 1 minute 1,000 years of information, you know, based on how fast that cyberspace reality is happening, right? Certain yogis acknowledged that they were like eternal beings. Now, there was this yogi in the Puranas who had lived through 7,500 apocalypses, like the dude could remember. He's like, yeah, man, you know, I remember, you know, the 7,000 apocalypse, you know. You know, the world was blue, the world was purple, the sky was purple. I've written a quote here, actually, I forgot to mention when I was talking about angels and demons. I've written demonstration of the angelic. And the word demonstration has the word demon in it, which is strange. But I feel that the demonstration of the angelic, it's as if like the illusion of the truth. That means there is no such thing as, let's say, an impure being. It is an illusion in the pure. The story I wanted to share about that is attributed to King Solomon, and I feel this has religious roots, this story, and hopefully I can remember it correctly. So King Solomon, in the theological narrative, evidently in his palace, he has these jewels, and these jewels get stolen. And people don't know who's stealing it. It's like a room that's locked, and they don't understand how it's being stolen and whatever. And then there's a sort of like sage, like some sort of wise man in the council of King Solomon. And this wise man goes to King Solomon and says, this is not the work of human beings, it is the work of something else, you know. And then King Solomon evidently makes a prayer to God where he wants to bring a sort of justice and wants a sort of control over all these impure entities in the realm. And so he is given that control, you know, and I feel its archetype comes through a ring. Now, what happens is the moment King Solomon gets this ring, he has this will over the impure. And he instantly commands, he's sitting in his palace, and he commands this creature that has stolen the jewels to appear. And they say this column of fire arises, and this, messed up looking creature, scary looking creature appears there. And this scary looking creature shouts, gives a scream where everybody in the council, everybody there in the palace just covers their ears and falls down on the ground. Then the story goes to a point where King Solomon is standing there, and he, in some sense, tames the will of this creature, and he says, why did you do this? And the creature says something in the sort of, I I heard the story very a while ago, guys. The creature says, the creature says something as if it had to do from the early times of the world. Yeah, I think this was it. Where at the early times of the world, it was as if there weren't demons, but something happened that caused them to be impure, and the jewels reminded him of the purity from before, and something like that. And the story gets stranger after that, of course. There's something about like a bed, and like, King Solomon becomes like this, next level power in the region and whatever. And but he is considered as a sort of prophetic figure in, for example, Islam. Usually those human beings that had a relationship with the Creator, that's the sort of archetype that is best of them. But the whole point of that, the reason I'm sharing that story, was that it was as if there was a clue in there that it's as if like what we think is a demon is like a mistake that has been repeated too long. Do you know? Or that which has forgotten about the nature, the true nature of reality. When I think about the nature of reality, on some level, of course, a person can have so many ideological frameworks just overlaid upon reality. Yeah, this means that means this, But when I think of it as if on some level I'm an energetic being, and this energy cannot be created and destroyed, it can just change from form to form. And then I think about consciousness being attention and energy simultaneous in an instant. It's as if one's attention to their nature, to energy, it's as if the truth of energy is an eternal, universal event, or I shouldn't say event, a universal will. And it's as if those who abide by the universal will, they have a greater antenna signal, right? So they get a sort of prophetic archetype. Those who in some sense do not go in accordance towards the universal will. And the universal will, of course, again, it's suggesting that it's like, even though we're seeing a physical reality where, we have articulated through fixed scientific laws where these constants don't change even though they do. It's as if the universe has a mind, just like we look at a person that has a mind. That mind is watching the body, right? When a person wakes up in the day, it's as if their mind is like a space of awareness, and their consciousness through their eyes has an acknowledgement of their body in that space. So the mind is watching the body, right? And so this notion of God, even though it is personified, it's like intelligence in the universe has been personified through that framework. It's like as if the universe has a mind, and its mind is aware of its body all the time. Now this universal mind, let us say, has intent. So when a person has an intent to raise its hand, it's like its hand raises. Let's say the universe had an intent to just pop out spheres everywhere. It's as if, imagine you're someone who studied cosmology, and excuse me for saying this, but it's as if like they asked the cosmologist who is under the impression that there's a universal mind, and they're like, we added all this stuff in the cosmos up here, and the person's like, the universe had balls. I know, sorry guys, it's just a silly joke. And you know, Attar, in his work, in his quote, he says, "Behold, desire and journey to the whole." You know, there was this person who said a distinction between something being finished, you know, the difference in meaning in being finished and in being complete. The person said that if you get married and your wife is happy with you, you know, it's as if, you know, you're complete. And then the person said, if you, let's say you're married and your wife is not happy with you, you're finished. So it's a sort of thing where it's like a sort of abidance with the universe, the universal will, a sort of completion, you know, and an abidance against the universal will. It's as if it is a sort of dismissal into the ignorance. I mean, it's like this, right? Imagine there's a sort of building, and in that building there's a sort of customs and a unique sort of culture, and you go into that building and you behave completely different than the customs and cultures that cultural influence that building has, right? That environment has. It's as if the environment gets angry at you. Imagine somebody's giving like a stand-up comedian's recording a special, and then there's a heckler, right? You know. So the stand-up comedian gets angry at the heckler, right? So I'm saying that it's as if there's a sort of space, there's a way that this space seems to have been intended to happen, and when the intention of the individual doesn't abide with the intention of the collective nature, then there is, you know, dismissal. You know, the stand-up comedian gets so angry, kicks out that person. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. I don't know, I feel like I'm personally going through certain transformations as well. Recently, I would say in my dream states and in my inner realms, I've had this sort of calling towards a renunciation, renouncing the outer efforts to some degree. You know, I have pondered on this question, what is going on here, for such a long time, and believe it or not, it just has 4 ways it can go. This whole world of ours has, you can say, 4 philosophical directions, you know. Either it is empty, either all of it is meaningless, you know, which doesn't seem to be the case because there's too much specific design. You know, just the fact of, you look at the creaturehood, you look at all the stuff that exists, it's like it's too specific, you know. It's as if somebody made something and then they either left it somewhere or they're watching it from behind the curtain. So there is one possibility of reality where it's void. There is one possibility of reality that all of this is illusion, an illusion of a singular truth. And then there's another possibility where the purpose of reality is neither to be empty, neither to be full in a singular way. The purpose of reality is that it's like an infinite song. It's like an infinite orchestra till the end of time. New musicians will come and they will play their tunes for the world. You know, they will express their work. You know, I feel that the advanced civilization and the sort of world peace that we as human beings can get access to is closer to that. And of course, there is that's the notion of infinity and infinite, let's say, view. And then there is the notion of duality where we are in now. It could be till the end of time. It's just a play of chaos and order. Could just be that there is no such thing as world peace. Things come into formation just like the human body, right? It was born, it came into form, it did some things, it was something, and then at the end of its life, it in some sense goes back into not existing, and then after the person passes away, other people are born. So in that view, there is again no more world peace. Pretty much the closest thing to world peace would be a sort of surfboard. Like we're surfing, you know, existence and non-existence, you know, the tides of existence and non-existence, or those forces that escort us that way. And there is something huge about decency, right? Because decency is something, I would say, where there is no reason. It's just like one's natural inclination. That means imagine in the future, there was a government for the world that came and said anybody who is kind, sincere, and honest will get these, let's say, honor points, you know, and these honor points can be exchanged for money. It's as if we'd see everybody in the streets having like a sphere above their head, you know, which is surveying them in a, let's say, in a compassionate technocracy. And so it would be something where where it's as if everybody goes through a phase of artificial kindness because they want their ego, but to be sincere, imagine you get more points for sincerity. You know? The survival really, the survival of our species, it's the sum total of the effect of all the stories we're telling ourselves before our eyes. You know, there's the GDP of a nation. Now imagine there's an inner realm GDP. It's like the type of ideological landscape one pilots through or generates. Sorry guys, excuse the noises. You know, I've written in my notes here, neurons are a language, but I have no way of relating it to this episode. No way, but in some sense. It all goes to how much life wants to be a photograph, how much life is a film. I feel in 100 years from now, maybe there will be nothing to talk about anymore. That means, can you imagine a phase in human history where human beings no longer require to speak? I envisioned it once in the sense where we're throwing holograms at each other. So imagine like you want to have a conversation with someone, everybody has these unique suits, and so you just with your hands, you know, you project like a, let's say, golden cube, and you throw this golden cube at the person, and the golden cube goes into their suit. It's a hologram, so it just goes into their suit, and they instantly know all the thoughts you wanted to share with them. You know. And just like a human being can make different decisions, you know, the more control we have over our species, it would be as if the more decisions, more options will open up, right? And before I end off, I want to read some quotes on inner peace. I mean, I probably should. Okay. The Dalai Lama: do not let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace. Saint Francis de Sales, he says, never be in a hurry. Do everything quietly and in a calm spirit. Do not lose your inner peace for anything whatsoever, even if your whole world seems upset. That's one's connection with their decency, I would say. Normal Vincent Peale says, the life of inner peace, being harmonious and without stress, is the easiest type of existence. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, nobody can bring you peace but yourself. Lao Tzu says, if you are depressed, you're living in the past. If you are anxious, you're living in the future. If you are at peace, you're living in the present. Here it says unknown, that means it's like the author is unknown, but the quote is, when things change inside you, things change around you. Definitely. Alanis Morissette says, peace of mind for 5 minutes, that's what I crave. Mother Teresa says, peace begins with a smile. Marcus Tullius Cicero says, peace is liberty and tranquility. Thich Nhat Hanh says, every breath we take, every step we make can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. Sylvia Plath says, I took a deep breath and listened to the old bray of my heart. I am, I am, I am. Stacy London says, you should feel beautiful and you should feel safe. What you surround yourself with should bring you peace of mind and peace of spirit. You know, feeling beautiful is, I would say, okay, that's important, but to create a beautiful world, that is the challenge. Yves Bahar says, sometimes you can find peace of mind by transferring yourself to different situations. They're just reminders to stay calm. Baba Haridas says, don't search for anything except peace. Try to calm the mind. Everything else will come on its own. I would say this is again the abidance by, let's say, the purity of the universal will. Mother Teresa, I read that. Karen Salmonson says, let go of the thoughts that don't make you strong. Albert Einstein says, peace cannot be kept by force, it can only be achieved by understanding. Yeah, and the whole point of my episode was that understanding requires to be multidimensional. That means if we think that understanding is only in one framework, there will be a war, we will have differences till the end of time. The only way we can surpass our differences if we change the context, in how we're arising the concept in that context. Eleanor Roosevelt, it isn't enough to talk about peace, one must believe in it, and it isn't enough to believe in it, one must work at it. I would say one has to design it. 100% peace should be designed. You improve, like let's say the people are fighting over resources, you give them resources, you design a system that can even provide them with resources, and they're no longer fighting. J. Donald Walters, you will find peace not by trying to escape your problems, but by confronting them courageously. You will find peace not in denial, but in victory. John F. Kennedy says peace is a daily, a weekly, a monthly process, gradually changing opinions, slowly eroding old barriers, quietly building new structures. Stella Elliott says peace brings with it so many positive emotions that it is worth aiming for in all circumstances. Lyndon B. Johnson says peace is a journey of 1,000 miles and it must be taken one step at a time. Frank Sinatra, if you don't know the guy on the other side of the world, love him anyway because he's just like you. He has the same dreams, the same hopes and fears. It's one world, pal. We're all neighbors. Wow. Jim Hendricks says, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Archbishop Desmond Tutu says, do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. Maha Gosananda, when you make peace with yourself, you make peace with the world. Indira Gandhi, you cannot shake hands with a clenched fist. John Lewis, not one of us can rest, be happy, be at home, be at peace with ourselves until we end hatred and division. And Mahatma Gandhi says, an eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. John Lennon says, imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. You see, guys, there's too many people talking about world peace, right? It's definitely something in the collective unconscious, and it's like a seed planted there. And I feel in the coming years, this seed will in some sense sprout. And in some sense, I'll keep saying some sense, in some sense. But, this world deserves peace. I mean, look at all those, all the people working, towards a future that is maintainable. The issue is that we have made the individual so important that we haven't even created a setting, where collective vision can be embraced, right? And even if it's being embraced, what happens? It's narrowed down through culture, Right now, it's like they say there's so many different cults, but if you look at a cult, it's like it's just actions of mind, right? You can't say like soccer players are a cult and like footballers are a cult and like basketball players are a cult, They're a cult that are, using the ball with their hands, It's like the same thing is going on with the human idea, and it's how we're approaching it, And there's so many different institutions that eventually have to integrate towards a global context. It's like, when will the global human being emerge? It's like, when will the patriotism for the planet arise? Not for parts of the planet that we colored like the face of a primitive, tribe. It's like, we have to advance, evolve. There is pressures to the body. You can totally see, like, a person doesn't eat food for like a couple days, and their psychology could become savage, right? So it's as if once we get over the physiological challenges globally, we have a chance to get over the psychological challenges, and the psychological challenges are really emotional maintenance. Anyways, guys, the first effort, at least towards world peace, is trying to find peace with ourselves. And it could be an instant, I have this vision of giving these, for example, 10,000 talks for this project. And I think of it sometimes, what if like something happens that I won't be in the realm anymore, right? So it's as if the only option is to make peace. There's the Zen story. I'll end it off with this. I think the Zen story is like the perfect analogy of the world peace we can have, the psychological state that we can be for world peace in the future. There's the Zen story where this Zen monk the Zen monk who's living at the bottom of this mountain. He goes for these evening walks, and he comes home, and he's living like such a minimalist, and he finds a thief in his house, and this is a very, let's say, liberated Zen monk, and the thief is like this young kid, who's just trying to survive, and he sees this Zen monk, and there's nothing in the house of the Zen monk, just like a wooden bowl or something. And the Zen monk sees the thief. They have that kind of awkward paralysis moment, and then the Zen monk does the unthinkable. The thief thinks like the Zen monk, this person, the Zen monk's gonna kick his ass or something. But what happens is that the Zen monk looks at the thief, this kid, and he says, "You have come a long way. You shouldn't go empty-handed." And the Zen monk takes his only possession, which was his clothing, his garb, his robe, and he gives his like monk robe to this kid, and he's like, "You can sell this and get some money from it." And the kid just like just bewildered kid, he just takes the robe and runs away, right? And the story has two ways it happens, where from the perspective of this kid, he's running, right? He's running away with the robe in his hand, and he suddenly stops midway, and he's like, "Wait a minute, what did that Zen monk have that he could give away his last possession?" What state of mind, what state had he attained that he was like that? And the kid sits down and just starts weeping. He just starts weeping, holding the robe in his hand, as if like there's so much more than this. And so the second part of the story, goes to the Zen monk, and the Zen monk is sitting naked, like in this grass field at night, and there's a dewdrop on this grass, on the straw of grass, and there's the reflection of the moon. And the Zen monk looks at that and says, "Wow, what a beautiful moon." and the Zen story ends. And I would say that is the state of serenity. That is a state where in our inner realms we were way more advanced than our outer realms, right? And in some sense it's as if the contentment with the changing world is the smile of it. I hope this episode was helpful. If these talks are helpful as well, please consider being a member, and thank you for this. Much blessings. And one last thing I'll say, regardless of your disposition, let's say right now it's a multidimensional landscape and there's different kinds of beings, impure, pure. The idea of living whatever dimension you're in, let's say there's audiences in other dimensions right now, wherever you are, right, it starts from the exploration of the source of one's eyes. That is where a knowledge comes that is not dependent, it is by itself moving. I would say that wherever you are, your eyes are your access point towards the universe beyond your eyes, towards the intelligence of the universe beyond your eyes, right? So in some sense, wherever you are, whatever you are, advance. And the greatest spirit guide of them all, our awareness, our mind, there's before I end off, guys, I want to share this one story from Buddha. I feel I need to share this story from Buddha. And this story from Buddha is very profound because Buddha was a being that was, first of all, the term Buddha means the awakened one, and he was a human being who, first of all, does Mahasamadhi. That means he consciously leaves this world, and at the same time he attains the greatest liberation. And so when Buddha becomes realized, he remembers all his past lives, and he shares a story with his disciples, and I want to tell you that story. And he says that before this life where I was a human, I was a being in hell. He's like, I was a person in hell, in some sort of hell loop in hell, and there was him and this other person, and there was like this hellish guard, okay? And every day they would have to do the same thing, imagine like Perseus mythology level of repetition. And so Buddha was like, every day they would do things, and this hellish guard would, with its like trident or something, kind of like hurt them and abuse them, right? One day who Buddha was in his past life, suddenly Buddha just gets fed up, and he looks at the person, looks at the hellish guard, and he says, why are you abusing that other person? Why? Right? And in that moment, the story goes that this hellish guard with his trident kills the person who Buddha was in that past life in hell. And so he stabs Buddha in the chest, and Buddha dies, right? And he dies and he incarnates as a human, right? And when he's Mahasamadhiing beyond this realm, what does Buddha do? It's a suggestion of an awareness that is by its own will, which is the universal will, returning to the universal will. There's a saying that Swami Krishnananda would say, religion is God remembering itself. So it's as if the purest thing is God, the impurest thing is like the oblivious creature. As a certain holy text says, it's as if when the heart of the creature is sealed, it dwells in the realm of deaf, dumb, and blind. And so it's as if the seal goes away when one realizes there is more, So any effort and attempt towards a nature that surpasses the ignorance of before, it's like, free. It's as if freedom on demand is true Mahasamadhi, Anyways, guys, I hope this episode was